Hey everybody, we are live in the Asia Tech Podcast studio. My name is Graham Brown, joined by Pavel Bolosky, the co-founder at Mailo. Welcome.
Thank you, Graham. Really good to be here.
It's great to have you here. And She Loves Data, of course, right?
Yes.
So, all the way from, well, I know you're living here in Singapore, but originally from Czech Republic?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Just north of Prague?
Yep. I actually live in Sydney right now. I've been based out of Sydney in Australia last 6 months. But my company and my team, majority of it is based in Singapore. Yeah.
Right. So you live in Sydney, your team's in Singapore, you're from just north of Prague.
Yeah. And second half of our team is in Czech Republic as well. So obviously the tech talent there. So it's
excellent. It's a long story.
Yeah.
We want to talk about Mailo. We want to talk about, the space that you're in, the problem that you're solving, and, how you're sort of going about that problem, how you're solving it. Talk a bit about your team, your journey, and so on. I want to start at the beginning, at the end, if that makes sense, because I know on your pitch deck, if we can get the pitch deck up, I'm not going to go through the whole pitch deck. I'm going to pull out some key points that if we jump into the pitch deck, Barrett, can we go right to the end of the pitch deck? Because here we have it, slide 30-something. And if you're listening and you don't see this, let me explain. Mailo means labyrinth or maze in Japanese.
That's right.
I lived in Japan. So when somebody said, oh, these guys Mailo or Meiro were coming in, I thought, hang on a second, what does that mean? And I looked it up and thought, oh, that's really interesting. So how does that all sort of come together?
Yeah, look, so obviously picking a name can be one of the trickiest names for business today, right? Because all the good ones are all the fruits and everything else is taken. So this is really difficult. So we're typically looking for .com domain and, 5-letter word that's easy to spell in any language, anyone can pronounce it. There's not that many left, and we kind of played with sort of the values we have and what we try to represent. And one of the key things, obviously none of us is Japanese, so we have nothing to do with the culture as the first direct link, but we really are, I suppose, fans of the minimalistic design and the culture to approach to management in terms of lean, clean solutions. We really like that, and the word maze is just something that is a perfect analogy to the sort of space of data and where companies are with it today. They are just lost for the most part. So we see that as a really nice analogy, and we kind of tested it. We've had 20 of my international friends who try to pronounce it for me on camera, so I make sure it doesn't mean any rude words in any language. Yeah.
That's cool. So you're. I mean, we'll dive into Mailo. How do you say Meiro? Because I say it.
Meiro. You pronounce it in Japanese.
Okay, so Meiro.
Yeah.
We'll dive into that. Look a bit deeper into the solution and the tech behind it. So I understand it with the context of maze and labyrinth. Is you're almost like a way out. You're helping people navigate. Which is a very complicated space, which is data, and particularly in the marketing space, understanding customers, consumer analytics, and so on. It really is a maze. Yeah. It's crazy world out there, and it's getting worse for people who are dealing with the data. There's silos, there's organizational structures, and every day there's a new platform being added to the mix, right? So it's not just like Facebook back in the day. There's something else now. We've got TikTok now. We've got all different kinds of platforms being thrown in, and you're having to measure every single interaction with consumers and profiles and so on. So we set the scene. Let's have a look at what the problem and the solution is. If we can get back into the pitch deck, Pavel, so if we can have a look. The problem itself, I wanted to start on this slide number 3, if we can sort of get this one up. So if you're listening, it says on here from channel to customer-centric models, and you've got a whole bunch of data. Yeah. Pavel, can you help us understand what this is?
Yeah, look, the left-hand side is really what we see kind of the practice being today, and what that means is that you are looking at, if you are looking at reporting and analytics in a business, you're typically looking at it vertically through channels, you are looking at, how is my website doing? How many visitors am I having? You're looking at it from that entity perspective, and we are, I suppose, taking different slides where we are saying, if you want to treat your customers as individuals, you need to understand their journey as they go through it, right? So rather customer-centric approach really means looking at a person rather than a channel, right?
So a channel would be like we have here.
Website, loyalty program,
right.
Email tool, absolutely. You're looking at what's my conversion rate on website, what's my open rate on my emails, right? And you have kind of these individual functions in business that are trying to optimize for that, but no one is optimizing for the bigger picture. And so the silo problem that's been something that's when we play a buzzword bingo, that's just one of the things that is coming up absolutely constantly you see my biggest sort of internal joke is really when I see the traditional software companies, not to name any names, like going up on stage and saying, oh, we are now saving the marketers from everything being in a silo. I'm like, well, you've been around for 30 years. You kind of created
it. You caused it,
so,
exactly.
Yeah. So, but it, to be serious, like that problem is absolutely real, and we realize it.
Okay. But what is the problem itself, and why is the channel-centric model a problem? Why is it? I mean, because I can, on my dashboard, look at all the data, and I can improve it, I can tweak it, I can split test it. What's wrong with that?
The problem is the single view of customers, right? One of our sort of advisors and friends put it really well for us. Works at a regional telco, and he said, "Look, we do have a single view of customer in the business. The problem is we have too many of them, and that's precisely it. Like you are not consolidating all of these single touch points into one entity, and that's obviously so that's kind of where we are getting into product we are building, which is customer data platform. And the issue with, if you look at the kind of the vendor landscape in marketing technology today, there's over 8,000 vendors, and like the map is irredeemable at this point for the last few years, right?
It's a maze itself.
Absolutely. So it's getting just bigger and bigger. So that's the sort of what sets the scene for this problem.
Okay. Let's go back then. So we've set the scene. We've had a look at the problem. We're in the world of channel-centric models, which is basically, where we measure data according to the channel which we touch the customer with, whether it's MailChimp or whether it's, the online website traffic, Google Analytics, and so on. And yet what you're saying is that if we can move to a customer-centric model, it would be, okay, so we have this customer, Pavel Bolosky, and this is his journey and how he sort of interacts with every single touch point in the business. Is that sort of where
precisely, yeah.
But how do you do that when you have like 9 million customers?
So that's actually, if you look at data management, that's a scale that's not really a problem. What is problem is a volume of events. So we've got a couple of use cases as customers where we're really looking at, it goes into millions of events and of customers and double digits of that of events, and that's really not a problem. Like today, the computational power that you have in sort of the modern hardware providers and the technology, the computing is really not a problem. What's problem is to sort of the applying a logic into it and some sort of consolidation of it, which is really difficult. So how do you organize, like if data is coming from 10 different places that are critical, how do you organize them? How do you synchronize them? How do you deal with a resolution of an identity? Like you are talking about actual customers, so this data cannot be or this approach cannot be probabilistic. You have to be precise when you're talking about customer and bringing in their transaction into the equation, right? But obviously the real need there is to have a holistic view of a customer. Give you an example. So what we talk about when we work with or talk to larger enterprises, this is a problem we are solving first for large enterprise, because that's the complexity there is a lot higher, and these problems are a lot more valuable, obviously. One of the things that we kind of how we describe it is like when you look at how you've been, you have a house that house has some rooms, and those rooms are full of people. What you don't know is who is in which room because your lights is off. The only thing we do as a business, when we talk about ourselves being in a data availability business, really, is we come in and we turn the lights on. And that's obviously there's an underlying a fair amount of data engineering expertise that's been built into a product. How do we connect all of this? How do we make sure it makes sense that this person is this person here, this person is that person there, and how do we bring it all together? That's really sort of the core value of that product.
So is the goal of that to produce, I know we're going to go into the personas part, but is that the sort of deliverable for all this, to say, hey, look, this is Pavel, this is who he is, how he sort of interacts with your platforms in different ways? Yeah. Is that kind of what the deliverable is that until now you can only sort of really do through focus groups or sort of questionnaires?
Yeah, look, that's absolutely right. So the goal there is to have your customers identified on as many touch points as possible, and be aware of their every single interaction. So one of a practical use cases we have for this is we are working on say use case which might be company that's similar to Spotify, right? So it's a freemium business, an app based, and what they are looking at, one of their biggest problem is they are looking at churn prediction and prevention. So they have an algorithms that are looking at that are looking into how a user is, going through their journey. And once the usage drops, they will flag them, and that, say email automation sequence will get triggered, and this person they will try to reactivate them. This is successful to a degree because it's a very linear situation. What we can do if we are able to integrate other sort of touch points, such as for the additional to the mobile app, if we are able to add in website, and we can specifically tag things around pricing and terms and conditions and policies around the website, if we can add that as an attribute to their profile, and this gets factored into that calculation, this algorithm will be able to spot this person a lot faster, and that might be absolutely crucial to saving them around or turning them around and improving your retention rate. So this is going to be the use cases are going to be very varied by business, but this is one example, like pretty specific.
Yeah, and okay, well, I want to have a look at these personas, and I'm fascinated by this. Before we get there, actually, I mean, that sort of churn prediction case study, and we're going to talk about your case studies as well in a minute. And you're not really doing anything different. You're not really sort of reinventing the wheel. You're just creating a good process, aren't you?
Look, there is 3 components of kind of where we are seeing ourselves, what we are sort of improving. And we actually are not we are not innovative company in a sense that we are doing something that hasn't been done, or actually it hasn't been done before. It just is been promised before, but it hasn't been done. So one of the things where we see ourselves not necessarily disrupting, I'm not big of a fan of that word, but more of an improving of performance of, would be a CRM. So CRM is a 25 years old concept, which has been designed typically around structuring transactional data. At B2B companies, at best, it's a notes for salespeople, and it's not really designed in a mindset where your customer has online, offline touch points, can come in, walk into the store, walk through a mall, contact your customer care on social, on phone, and on email. It's just that at the point in time when this was being designed, this wasn't really the case, so it's not designed for it. So this integration, this connectivity in CRM is an issue. So that's what we're solving for. And we are enabling a lot finer segmentation, activation of these people based on individual triggers on the back end. Again, something that is absolutely being done, but you are just feeding the end touch points with a lot better, finer, in more intelligent data. That's all it is. So that sort of goes back to my point of us saying that we are vaguely in a data availability business, because we just
availability is the key word, though, isn't it? Because until now, it's been siloed everywhere. I mean, data warehousing is a thing, right? People store data rather than put it out there. And CRM systems until now have very much been about collecting information just in case. I'm going to collect all this survey information about you, Pavel, just in case I might need to come back to it. We asked you 100 questions. In 6 months' time, somebody might come back again. I might be able to use that question, that answer. It's not sort of regularly being used or active or out there. It's stored and locked away in many cases in organizations. So that's the challenge. Okay, so I want to have a look at these personas, because I come from the world of marketing, and personas is not new, right? I mean, back in the day when they said, draw a picture of, they used to call these like pen profiles, right? In the advertising world, is where draw a picture of your customer, and you actually physically draw a picture, and it was this person, and she was like 27 years old, and she was a professional who worked in the city and all that. So where you get into personas here, I think it's round about that solution, about slide 6 or just after, you talk a little bit about personas. Maybe, this customer personas. So how does it now different in the data world? How do you then create these?
So this is one thing that we are, I suppose, trying to just highlight for customers, because we've been through this, building this application. So we know what the customer that's sort of newer to the space don't know, right? It's not as much as a personas in the traditional sense as an actual persons, or actors in the market. So when you're looking at someone who has a model such as Grab or Uber, you're looking at a very different expression of that customer. So when we call the software customer data platform, it's about that sort of probably more precise definition should be something around known person to a business, rather than a customer. It doesn't need to be an active customer, but when you look at marketplace like that, you have at least 3 different actors. So you have with Grab, you will have your drivers, you will have your users as a customers, you will have your vendors at the very, very least. And their definition will be very different in terms of behavior. So they might do completely different things. And number one, they will do them on different touch points. So those apps can be structured completely differently. Some might have an offline touch points, and it's producing data. So you have to be able to organize this information, for every department that is going to use it, that's going to work with it in a different way, in almost like in a parallel fashion. So this is something we are kind of highlighting to the customers, that they might not even be realizing it, because if you talk to someone from a marketing function in a business, they are typically serving one product in a big business, and they're not really seeing even the bigger picture of their business in that sense.
Yeah, so this must be an increasing problem as well, because now companies aren't just serving one customer. Now companies are more and more like platforms. You talk about Ubers and so on. They have different actors now,
yeah,
right?
It is absolutely a problem. But I think the bigger problem in that that's sort of looming over this whole situation is if you look at who owns technology in businesses today, and the problem is that marketers own a lot more technology than IT, and I think the sort of the tipping point was a year and a half ago when there was some survey published that an average marketer in an enterprise now has a bigger disposable budget for technology than an IT department. Obviously, leaving aside infrastructure heavy things like telco, but more like consumer-based companies, and that's absolutely defining for this whole situation, because marketers, and I don't mean to be scolding or at all sound rude, but marketers are not technical people. They are not data people. They are communications, creative storytellers, and this is not a sort of native mindset that they have. And they don't know the last thing about data management. And all of a sudden, average department in large enterprise uses 60 to 90 different marketing tools, whether that's from your web analytics to link shortener to anything else to store their documents, and this is all producing data, and obviously that's not gonna slow down. If you look at kind of a next few years, what it's gonna look like, look at the whole voice ecosystem. So your Alexas, your Google tools that are voice empowered. So this brings another layer of complexity, So other than the whole IoT, so this is my point is that we're not finished. This is not slowing down. So
no, absolutely.
This is just gonna get more complex.
Well, if you go back, I mean, like I sort of like alluded to, I'm from the marketing world, is that, a marketer in the old days would hire an external consultant to come in and tell them what the data meant. They would come in and they would be like an analyst or internal business analyst, for example, and they would crunch numbers and tell them. Right now, what seems to be happening is now marketers have the tools at their fingertips for all this data, even your own tools, for example, and they have to understand it, because to get somebody now to come in and sit with them and consult them and go through like strategy with them, it takes time. They have to act straight away. They can't be in this sort of like very convoluted feedback loop. They've got to be making decisions straight away. And this is the challenge, right? As you say, now it's the marketers driving the organization, because at the end of the day, that's all it is. It's just marketing, right? I mean, if you look at how organizations are structured now, it's marketers and data, and everybody else is supporting them, right? That is the modern organization. There's nobody really else now in that whole setup apart from a few strategy people, but that's how they're organized. So hence, we're here talking about the solution. Well, let's have a look at some of the case studies. I mean, you've got a whole bunch of case studies in your pitch deck here. Maybe we can do slide 18. This is the one that I wanted to pick out. We can sort of jump forward to 18. You've got a few social media case studies, but there's this, it's 17, 8, yeah, that's right, 17. So social media data capture example. This is quite technical, because I wanted to go a little bit technical.
Right.
Put some numbers into it and understand how it works. What is actually happening here? And bear in mind that some people might just be listening to this. So can you sort of explain how this works?
Could we actually go with the previous one? I think the website will be a little bit sort of one grade complexity lower than the social.
We've got to 16.
Thank you so much. So look, this is an example of what an architecture of one of our deployments looks like on a website, right? So the point is, what you're trying to do is you're trying to identify people who are in your customer database, and whether this is POS or CRM, absolutely don't care, and people who are coming to your website, what they are doing there, right? So there, the first challenge in that case is the identity resolution. So you're looking at matching their login information, or whenever they sign into an app, they are submitting a form or subscribing to a newsletter. All of this can be tracked, and if you are attaching some sort of identification token on that gets afterwards collected into Miro, into our data layer. There's an automated process of algorithms that we've developed that stitches the person's profile together. So what you see in here in this case is that the little three green boxes are basically looking at data being collected through Google Analytics, through Snowplow. So Snowplow is a technology which is an open source alternative to Post's Web Analytics, which allows you to collect raw data, and also Sitecore, so a traditional company CMS. And we are sort of sending the device ID that we are assigning to any device on the site to every single one of them. Then we sort of collect it, stitch this all together. Again, that happens automatically with sort of data science team that works this out. And whenever we hit a new device, that gets sort of created a profile, and you basically create a persona, and you are collecting whatever information that is event-based. So person, clicked on this site, came from this source, is coming from either organic or an advertisement source. So whatever sort of the details are important for further decisioning on the person, we'll take that identifier, so the PII information, and obviously PII is a critical part of this whole equation, especially in the time we live in right now, and that gets verified against the identity will get validated against client's customer database, so CRM or POS, and if we get back information that this is an actual customer, we'll update it accordingly, and we can start sort of allowing the marketer sitting on the back end of that. So our application has sort of a second layer, which is more of a business user interface, where they can start segmenting these people a lot finer. So if you imagine this as a one input, what you are basically, the way you can use this is we have a customer who's going to be using this in a way where they are identifying high value. So imagine banking. You have high value products on the website where 99% of their customers are debit card standard account customers. So we will be tagging up and collecting events around individuals who we've already identified, if they are coming to sites which are credit card oriented, which are mortgage oriented, and that's something that you can then act on. Now that's the act on. That's a really, really important part here. So what you've described before, and I really like that, is that everyone's kind of trying to build a marketing data lake or data warehouse, and they are trying to integrate everything for the sake of integration, because that's what's sort of the trend that they are seeing in the media. What's missing is activation. So at best, you build dashboards, you build visualizations, and you build reports off of all of this data, and that's a great first step. But we really are moving into time and an era where you need to act on this information that you've collected, and the pressure on ROI on all of these marketing tools is going to be, with the increasing investments, ever bigger than ever before. So this is quite interesting. So when we have collected that list of people who are interested in a mortgage or website or credit cards, we can very simply check it back into the CRM, where salespeople is going to get alerted that this is probably a hot lead, or we can pass it into call center, or even email it as a PDF to your sales manager, and they can call this person because they actually know them.
Right.
And it's, you're going from our landing page for credit cards was visited 100 times, happy days, to here's Joe, and Joe was on the site, and he's also your customer, and
right.
he didn't come from advertising, he came organically, so it's probably higher priority than someone else who came from advertising, right? So,
right, gotcha. So let's sort of feed that back to that starting point, which was the different paradigms about marketing: channel-led, customer-led. So in the channel-led, that data is being fed back to the web team, and the web team is sitting there going, oh wow, look, our landing page, we've got 1,000 hits for this product or this promotional, this campaign, right? And that's what they then report back to their boss and say, look, we've been successful, thank you very much, give us another assignment. That's sort of how it's been, right? But what's happening now is you're getting this information, Pavel's landed on this page. We know it's Pavel because we've matched it up.
Yep.
And also he's a high net worth individual. He's looking at life products or mortgage products or whatever. That then gets fed automatically to a human being, maybe even like a sales team. and then they can action that. So they're getting really high quality leads where, okay, here are people that are coming through that we know, this profile, this intent right here, right now. And the timing's really important here, isn't it? Because if that was done in the old school world, somebody would have to sit on that, make a decision. 2 weeks later, we're still making a decision. But you might not be interested in products by them.
Absolutely. But I guess the bigger pain point there is that it's not scalable. So people cannot be making individual decisions about customers. Of course, marketers are working one-to-many, right? So this needs to be sort of machine produced, and you need to have an environment and interface where you can build these rules, exactly what you just described, through a very, very simple interface where you put this in action. So I'll give you another example. So where this is perfectly applicable. So I have bought a new laptop. I've just switched from newer version of that to something else. I'm not gonna name names since they are not in the room. It would not be.
Would it be Windows?
Would not be fair. Could be.
Oh wow, it's gone the other way. This is interesting. All right.
And so what I've done is what I would normally do. I'll look up the landing their sort of e-store on my mobile. I go to the website and I'll eventually go into I think one of the stores here in Singapore, and I bought it and I go away. Right? And I get home and open Facebook. And what do you think I see? Remarketing ad for that same product, right?
Wow.
And I keep seeing it 4 weeks later.
Do you want to buy another one?
I'm taking screenshots of it, and I'm actually going to use it in presentations because this is super funny, right? And the point is, there's two things that this is causing as a problem. Number one, I know it's a sort of, you are talking about cents, so this is money that's negligible to most businesses. But you are showing me ads that are completely having no effect because I've just bought something, right? So you're wasting budget, number one. Number two, you're actually annoying me, and that's the worst thing, which is hard to measure. So things like when you look at combining these signals coming in from what person is doing on the website, how are they interacting on a customer care, and what are they doing in the actual product, combining it with actions such as when you say, look, if I want to run an email campaign, and typical logic is, okay, I'll pick my cohort of customers. I'm going to say customers who recently purchased and live in Singapore, and I'm going to send them an email. And that's what marketers today can absolutely do, right? And they typically do it within the environment of doing that segmentation within that tool where they are executing it, being MailChimp, Silverpop, whatever email tool they are using. So what we are doing is we are saying the segmentation should happen on the CDP before you actually activate the data. And we can go a lot more finer. So we can say not just, hey, it lives in Singapore and purchased something, but we can also say if that person interacted with the customer care and filled out the NPS, the Net Promoter Score, worse than 6, then exclude them from this audience. Or anyone who is recently had an unhappy experience, or someone who just recently purchased, if that's part of the cycle, automatically exclude them from all advertising audiences. And that's the whole point. You would like to do that, but you can't do it because these people are not identified across all of these touch points. Hence, the activation becomes hard.
Can that whole process be automated? I know there's bits where they have to touch human beings, like go into a store and so on, and somebody has to maybe pick up the phone. But the actual, the feeding of the pipes, input output, is that all automated? 'Cause that's really important in process, isn't it? 100%. That's where the bottlenecks occur.
So what we are basically saying is that this whole process, obviously the consumption and the activation of data, that needs to be automated. And we do that. So that's sorted. What's where sort of the business user, the human, comes into that is building out these business rules and creating these sort of logical chains. If you're familiar with if this then that.
Absolutely,
so I do ABC, I don't do D, E happens. So someone needs to come in and define these rules we sort of allow the business user to do that. Another kind of a big thing we are solving, and I have this anecdote from a friend of mine who is a product marketer at a large bank in Hong Kong, and when he wants to have as a part of his campaign, he wants to send out an email. What he has to do is the process where he goes to his IT, submits a request to get a basically simple extract from their database, which says, show me my customers who live in Hong Kong and maybe Taiwan and I don't know where else. And this process takes 6 weeks. Gee. And there's a human, like at least 4 different people.
Do they have to type it out?
That would be faster. No, it's just scheduled throughout the traditional like IT workflow, right? People have to check it, and that itself creates, especially in a era of GDPR and that sort of privacy law, that creates so many complexities that their law departments would be so interested in, because if you run that segment and you export it, and if there's sort of a lag between you sending it and you kind of getting access to it 3-4 weeks, the people who are in that segment could have theoretically unsubscribed from your database, and if you're targeting them, then you're potentially liable and are creating a problem for the organization.
Some could have died as well at that sort of time. That, that's the problem. The market moves on, right?
Totally, absolutely.
Yeah,
and the point is, it's your IT people are smarter than to do that kind of job. So that's again the data availability. So we are giving a marketer a very simple interface where they can design this request through a visual interface in less than 30 seconds, and that's.
I find it fascinating. I know you've talked about the customer view, and I know you've got a slide as well. I'm going to jump into that in a minute. But before we talk about that, you mentioned a really interesting point, Pavel, is that marketers and IT people are smarter than this, right? And it just the organization gets in the way, and that's the challenge, isn't it? It's trying to get the organization out of the way and let people do what they're really good at. Of course, organizations have to have checks and balances and so on, and that has to happen. But it shouldn't stop people doing their job and doing what they do well. And if you were a good marketer, if you were like talented and one of the best, like digital marketers or internet marketers or however you want to call it now, a marketer, right? In your space, and you were working in a bank, or you were working in any large corporate, an airline, or any FMCG company, for example, you want to do projects that make a difference, and you could go anywhere in the world. You could walk into any job because you've got the skills, right? So when they're faced with that process of 6 weeks, it's like, why am I doing this? Like,
exactly.
I can go and get a similar kind of pay over here, and I can make a difference, right? And it's a talent thing now, and not an HR function, but it's about retaining talent, because they want to work on great projects, the 10x projects, right? And when you put all these kind of like silos, it demotivates people. I don't want to now go back and ask for email data because I know I have to go through this horrible 6-week cycle.
I agree. People want to make a difference. Whatever they do, they want to make a difference, and that's really important. And they don't want to be running SQL queries into a database, getting a list of emails. No one wants to do that in IT. Sorry. Those
days are gone. All right, well, let's jump into the customer view, because you sort of mentioned it with your computer example, which I think is interesting. We've got to slide 20. This one here, single view of the customer. So if we can kind of actually look at what comes out the other end, and I think, is it the slide above is actually just a daily landscape. Okay, so single view of the customer. Tell us a little bit about what actually this looks like when you build a profile, what kind of information you collect. And what I'm really fascinated by is that how does that change behavior? So all very well, things get more efficient, people are faster. Does it change the way that marketers and organizations behave when they get structured a little bit differently? So absolutely. Tell us a little bit about the customer view as well, and then how that affects people's behavior.
Right. So look, data visualization, that's not something where we are feeling we are making a lot of difference, but this particular function of the platform is very important because this just inspires action, nothing really else. So obviously, if you are looking at it as a marketer or one-to-one, that's not going to be useful. You're not going to be able to check all 10 millions of your customers and do something specific for them, right? So that's where the sort of the business rules and automation come in place. But what you need to do is you need to see this and able to be able to realize the full potential of this. So what we are basically looking at is from every single touch point that the company brings in, and typically they are kind of in particularly like this order. So you are looking at a website, you are looking at mobile app, great source of data if it's first party app. You're looking at loyalty programs, you're looking at some sort of transactional system, so POS or CRM. You're looking at emails, you're looking at text messaging platforms. In marketing, this is extremely powerful, even though it seems like outdated technology. Text messages really work for marketers. So they have one of the highest conversion rates. And what you want to see is you want to see how you have the visibility of this person, across these channels, right? So what we are looking at is a very simple menu, simple card of a person with all of these attributes that we have designed and are available. Now these attributes or the variables are as sort of customized for every single organization based on their particular needs and use cases. So this is really important. This is where this is not one size fits all solution. Absolutely, there is the amount of configuration that needs to happen, but it's typically through experience and conversation with the client. We have a basic package that we will roll out automatically for everyone. If I can sort of bother you guys to switch to slide one after. There's a different view of this, which is a timeline of that same view. So you're actually looking at consolidated events on a timeline, and what you see is a kind of on a monthly or whatever the sort of the roll up comes up to, is you're looking at, look, this month this person visited the website 8 times, talked to customer care 3 times, purchased twice. So is there something we would like to? Is there some sort of automated action or sequence we would like to trigger on the basis of that?
This is the customer journey, isn't it? That
Absolutely.
You're being visualized.
Yeah. But you don't want to visualize it, you want to action on it, and really this is where we kind of see people are coming here to get a inspiration and figure out what they could do with the data. What's important is the segmentation afterward, the building the business rules and putting them into action. So really, it's the data availability and it's the actionability, which is a big issue. Like what we have seen, I think we've lived through an era of business intelligence, and that's something every single marketer wants to have a nice dashboard, and that's cool. You need to have a visibility. That's a part of the journey, but it doesn't stop there. It has to go to action. That's the important piece on the data acquisition.
So what do people do then once they have these dashboards and they have the actionability? Do they make different kind of decisions like they would have done 5 years ago with just a good BI dashboard?
Yeah. So look, it's about how do you do activation today? So if let's say email campaigns are one of the part of the function, you are doing it on what I described before. You might be saying, look, I want to reach out to my audience in Singapore, and I want to choose mail and a sort of demographic segmentation in the way you would. But you right now, because you have an access to what this person does on mobile app and what they do, whether they open email. So you can say, give me an audience that might be 10,000 people in the beginning, but then I want to apply a couple of extra rules where I say, I don't want to exclude people. I want to exclude people who never open my email. So I'm not sending it to someone who is never opening anything else. I want to target people specifically who are only touching feature A, B, but not C inside of the mobile app, right? And that's a lot more informed segmentation and focus you are doing. And again, getting the data where it's needed, that's an important thing. A lot of kind of oftentimes what we see is that campaigns, especially in sort of a marketing departments in campaigns, are run just kind of the way they used to do it. So we do emails because that always worked, and it still somehow works, even though those conversion rates are kind of going where we know what they're going. But when you look at that, what we also do is when that little radar chart on there, which shows you how interactive a person is on every single one of those touch points, that's really important. So what you do is we would say, we kind of are changing behavior where we are saying, you are not beginning with, I'm running a campaign on Facebook. You're saying, I'm running a campaign, and we will show you which is the best place, best destination to run it based on where these people are active. If we know that 80% of these people never open email, don't send them email. That's simple as that. And that, what we are, where in the end of the day, where we can make a difference in a business is we either save money or we make new money. So we kind of are seeing that we address both of these things. So optimizing marketing budgets, if that was the only thing that we did, would be good enough. But also, helping you understand your customer better. And that's unfortunately something that's a little bit vague, because every single business is going to use that information a little bit differently. But having the data available in an actionable format, that's really critical.
But we're seeing now, I mean, especially here in Asia, even here in Singapore, Southeast Asia, there are good examples of companies which are emerging. I know you talk about the customer profile and using customer data and so on, and that to be seen as having a direct impact on profitability of the business. And we're seeing, for example, like AirAsia are stepping up, and they're a great case study now where they are just getting all their data together and getting organized. And now you have, even here in Singapore, like new entrants like Circles Life in the telecom space, who are doing great things with their marketing. Nothing radically different, but just doing the data so much better and making it much more actionable, and managing to compete with the big guys, right? The big boys in their incumbent space. So I think what's going to happen is in time, through sort of natural selection, those people who, yes, okay, maybe there isn't a really strong case for customer data in the sense of, customer personas right now, but they believe in it, they understand it, they will then rise to the top of their fields, and then people will follow and copy and model on them, right? So that will become the norm. So yes, there is a really strong case in marketing, but I think what you're doing in terms of building the personas, having that sort of longitudinal view of them, that will become the norm in years to come, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, if you look at markets like Hong Kong and China, what they are doing with identity, sort of resolution recognition, that's maybe from a consumer's business standpoint of view in the rest of the world, a little too far fetched, maybe a little extreme, but that's absolutely where this whole thing is going to go. And if you in 10 years down the line, if you're not able to recognize your customer when they walk through the door in your actual retail store, then you probably don't have a place in the business anymore. This is tricky. So that identity of a person and knowing them on different touch points that you have, and I guarantee there's going to be more of those touch points in future. It's going to get only more complicated. That's just going to be vital to the business.
Yeah, and we just look at what's coming out of China at the moment, like with the retail stores and how more advanced they are than, if you go to America and see retail in America and compare, which retail in America used to be, was the vanguard, was the leader in the world. But that's the future being laid out for us. Let's talk about Meiro in terms of the company and your future as well. How old's the company now?
So the company is about 1 year old. We have, we are 8 months. We've launched a product officially launched a product in September only. But we have a slightly, I suppose, unusual journey because we come from the background of doing data analytics consultings. We've been selling data analytics projects to companies here for 4 years now. It was sort of past my Social Bakers experience here in Asia. And obviously a lot of marketing, a lot of social media still in that mix. And we're very fortunate that we've kind of one of our, we were trusted by one of our customers who's a bank in the region that came talk to us about a year and something ago about the problem of not having the visibility over unified view of a customer, and we've kind of realized that this is actually echoing the conversations we've been having around the region with so many different people, and we said, look, this is clearly an opportunity. So we started sketching out solution, and that sort of project with one customer turned into a product journey, which was a little bit unexpected, but it's very, very interesting. So we are right now, we are based in Singapore. We are approximately 20 people, hiring a couple of different positions right now, and
20 people here in Singapore?
20 people across the region. So we have the engineering team sits in Czech Republic, in Brno, which is absolutely delightful city if anyone has a chance to go. It's almost as good as Prague. And we have a sort of more client-facing team and analytics team, delivery team, and sales, obviously, here in Singapore. I'm personally based in Sydney right now, so I'm kind of looking at a little bit more of a market exploration.
There's no reason why you can't, in these days, be across 3 different time zones, isn't it? I mean, we've seen this now. It's companies like Buffer and how they've built themselves, right? It's a reality now.
We've actually started as a distributor team. So when I got together with my co-founder here in Singapore 4 years ago, when we launched the company, the second day I moved out of Singapore to maintain the cost, and I moved to Bali. And we have run a remote business for about 2.5, 3 years, and it is possible. It is definitely not easy, but it's one of the options that you have today, and it's just kind of generally, everything has a upside and downside, right? So the cost efficiency might be the upside, the sort of the agility and the speed of the movement might be a little bit of a downside, but you can make it work.
But for the right people, it works, right? And that's the key. For the right people, they get into that. They actually want to work in that kind of setup as well.
Yeah, and we have I suppose a little bit specific culture where kind of we value sort of responsibility and sort of a self-drive a lot more than hard coded organizations with responsibilities and rules, and I think we attract people like that as well.
Absolutely. I want to ask about your hiring as well, because you mentioned that you're hiring, what kind of people you're looking for. But before we do that, are you raising funds at the moment?
We have not started yet actively. We've been lucky that we were sort of revenue. We had revenue coming in from basically from the day one. So we've been bootstrapping the company, I suppose that's what you call it. And we're really optimizing for kind of the control and the speed of movement at still fairly good rate of growth. But we will be going out to raise funds early this year, probably looking at closing something around Q2, end of Q2 this year. We'll be probably looking at skipping a couple of the usual entry-level rounds just because we already have that covered.
Revenues, right? There's absolutely no point.
Yeah, and we really like. I guess personally, I really like the kind of that freedom that we have to focus on the product. We are not necessarily accountable to outside investors. I kind of have obviously stories from friends and industry how this sort of hinders the progress in some cases. So you obviously it's a trade-off. Everything is a trade-off.
I mean, you're a co-founder. You would spend so much of your time just out there pitching to investors rather than trying to build the product and win clients.
And I'm personally excited by building a product and by talking to clients and industry people. And I kind of don't really want to be out there and pitching myself and taking my underwear on the table.
Exactly, you don't need to because you've already got the revenues coming in, and it will be, I guess, Q2 onwards is more of a strategic partnership as well. Somebody's not just bringing money, but also something else to the table, right?
Like, look, we've obviously talked about it, and this is a part of the discussions we keep having. And I think there are really two scenarios. What you can do is you can talk about sort of a smart money, and you can talk about people coming in with strategic partnerships and networks and stuff. That's definitely one of the options for us. I suppose it would be more of an industry partnership, so it would be a lot more interesting in a technological companies to be working with us in terms of investments. Or the other side might be simply dump money without giving up control.
Right.
That might be also an option because we know what we want to do, we know how we want to do it, and that might be another sort of way. The problem with these things is it's not wrong or right. They're both viable. They both make sense, and it's just which one is it going to be.
Well, we have time. Okay, so let me ask you about the hiring aspect, because you've already talked a little bit about your culture, so I want to explore that a little bit because it's really important for talent. So people who listen to the show, watch this show, and they listen to Pavel's story and think, well, I want to be on board. I like what you're doing. It really appeals to me. You're building something and I want to be part of that. That's what attracts the right people, isn't it? It's not like, okay, so what are the hours? That's the wrong question that somebody's going to ask you. They're interested in, like, what's the vision? I will get a chance to work with you, because you'll be almost a mentor to anybody that joins the company, because that will then, they will learn, they'll transfer that information down to them that you've all learned in your past and what you've learned with this business as well. But the culture is a key aspect of it. You're a distributed company across time zones. What kind of mindset do you think somebody needs to have to thrive in Mayro?
So they need to be a learner and they need to be open-minded. That's the key most important things that we have. And actually, hiring has always been easy for us. And I know this is a tricky part for a lot of companies. But through our community activities, we have enough exposure and actually built a nonprofit which has a massive reach into
She Loves Data.
She Loves Data right. into the community. We can talk about it for sure as well. And that's something that kind of gives us, not necessarily just that CSR aspect on a paper, but it really attracts people who are like you, who want to take part in that, but obviously also kind of need a commercial job. But when I talk to our analysts, what they are saying, look, this is a great opportunity. I get to work on interesting stuff, but I also get paid for coaching and training at workshops which are free for community for sort of a greater good cause, which is really interesting. So that's something that's been we have that sort of the branding and then network created. I think that community building is really really important in this sense, and it's always being labeled as giving back. I don't necessarily feel like we've taken anything, so the giving back part, I'm not too sure that's a fitting. I think it's generally giving. Like we have been. Personally, I can speak for myself. I have been very, very fortunate, successful to a large degree, and I feel like this is something that I need to share at my entire journey. I'm not waiting to be Bill Gates at 50 and then start giving it all away. Like this needs to be happening at any given point in time.
Absolutely, we might not make it to 50. That's how it is, right?
With this lifestyle, probably not.
Who knows? But the point is that you must have a lot of people that approach you. You've obviously She Loves Data. A lot of people know about this project. It's fantastic what you're doing. You're in an interesting space as well, so people are going to be interested in you and your journey. What kind of skills are you looking for from the community? If somebody reached out to you and said, hey, look, I want to be part of this, is there particular things that you're looking for?
Yeah, so right now we are looking for a couple of people in data analytics and data engineering space. So, kind of a little bit of a computer science, a little bit of a databases, kind of understanding, and the kind of right geeky mindset. Like you get a lot of traditional, CVs that are banking background, 7 years at one bank, 4 different positions, one very particular vertical thing. Where when I get a CV, I would actually encourage everyone to read one of our job descriptions on the site. When you look at the marketing role that we have opened right now, just for the entertainment value, I think it's written a little bit differently than how you're used to seeing your job descriptions.
How?
Look, I'm kind of taking a little bit of a stab at the startups, and we're saying, look, if you were looking for the free beer at the office and the ping pong tables, we have none of that. You know, so try Facebook, try Google.
The slide.
We don't do that. But if you are looking for responsibility and an ability to carve your own space and do what you want to do and grow where you want to grow at a company that's sort of on the go and going to be growing, that's really a place where you want to be. And I've kind of always appreciated, while formal education is necessarily absolutely, specifically in certain industries and areas. If you want to be a doctor, it's kind of good to go to university. What we are doing, there's not really a long history, and the educational system isn't really built around this. So we are, we kind of like, I get excited when we get CVs where people are linking to their GitHub as an analyst, and they are showing us their products, and this is amazing.
They've done something.
This is really amazing. Yeah. And they might be someone who is in 1 or 2 years out of school, may not be great communicator, but they are they have this spark, that exploration mindset, which is what we really like to enable. So we really like that.
Yeah, you say some great things there as well. I mean, I'm always curious. We recruit as well. We hire, like any startup. I always look for what have they done outside of what their boss and what their mum and dad and what their teacher has told them in their life. If somebody's 25 years old sitting here, they've had plenty of time to do something. What are their projects that they've done? What have they built? GitHub, show me your folder. Have they built an Instagram shop, for example? Or did they have electronic dance music album out there? Or did they get involved in a project like She Loves Data, for example? Show me those things, because that shows us as hirers that they don't need to be told to do things. Yeah. They can say to you, hey, Pavel, look, I've been looking at this challenge that we have in the business, and I think this, like I've had all these ideas and I've done the research, and, I've gone away, and you didn't need to tell me to do this. It's like, this is the extra stuff that I'm bringing to the table. And that's like how we build a business together, right? Yeah.
I would say one of the sort of things that is hard to come by in Singapore, especially, are definitely salespeople, and I think that's across the startups. And I've been listening to your show for quite a while, so I kind of laugh when this comes up, because that's
every time
everyone wants a hunter, and this is a rare skill in a society like Singapore. So that's a trickier to get by. So, but that's definitely something we would be interested in. Otherwise, a couple of analytical data engineering roles. I'm looking for a more junior full stack marketer, which again, it's a bit of a daring, challenging description, like wanting a 360 someone who knows a little bit of everything kind of well, but not really being a specialist in any one thing. So that's a tricky piece.
Yeah, but it's a challenge. We like a challenge here, right? I think the thing is, look, if you've listened to Pavel's story and you've got an understanding of Mero and how they work and what they're trying to do, just reach out. I think the thing is not to wait for, look, you need this exact job role and this is my exact background. It's more sort of a bit of this, isn't it? How does it sort of fit in here? And that conversation that you're going to have together, that's the right person or not. At least this is worth taking forward. So I don't think anybody listening should say, okay, look, maybe, my background is the sales guy. Maybe I haven't been selling these kind of solutions. But I love what you're doing, and I want to reach out to you and talk to you and find out a bit more about whether or not I fit in there. That's really the starting point, is it, of that? So I would ask you as well, what is the best way for people to do that? How do you like people to contact you? What's your preferred platform?
Look, I think if you look up my name, anything has come on from LinkedIn to Instagram to our website, so easily through Mero.io actually. And my email will be pavel@mero.io. Or if you want to find me on Instagram, I'm targeting the millennials in the space. My tag is extra_bagus. So you can tell I've lived in Indonesia for a while. So,
there you go. Props.
That's it. Or LinkedIn is obviously easy to as well, and I'm kind of visible on all of these platforms.
Awesome. We'll put all the details on the show notes. Pavel Bolowski, it's been a real pleasure. A lot of fun speaking about your journey and Mero and what you're doing, and She Loves Data as well. Check those out. We'll put all those links in there so people can check you out. if you're interested, reach out. Potential partnerships long term, people who are working in this space, people who maybe want to join the team, or people who just something you said triggered something in them that they feel they need to contact you. Maybe at this stage we don't know what that connection is, but it's a journey, isn't it? And you don't know where that goes in the grand scheme of things. These people can be useful long term, so reach out and make contact. Tell Pavel that you watched the story and you're inspired to reach out to him. So thank you so much for coming today. It's been a real inspiration.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for sharing your journey.